It's a pretty simple piece of parenting advice, but it's one of the hardest things to do in the world. As a parent, you realize it doesn't matter what you tell your kids. It doesn't matter what your teachers tell them. It doesn't matter what you write, what they read. What matters is what they see you do. That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode, the power of being a good role model. Bruce Springsteen has actually talked about this. He said that the key choice we have to make in regards to our children is whether we're going to be an ancestor for them or a ghost. An ancestor is someone whose example, whose essence, whose history, whose life inspires us, guides us, instructs us, and teaches us. A ghost, obviously, comes around and haunts and scares and plagues a person. As you're thinking about what kind of example you're going to provide for your kid, this to me is a really critical choice. Am I being a good ancestor to my kids here, or am I being a ghost? Am I setting forth an example, being the kind of person, living the kind of life that's going to inspire my kid, lift them up, show them what's possible? Or am I cursing them? Am I damning them? Am I haunting them? And this choice between being an ancestor and a ghost is an essential one. An ancestor or a ghost. You're going to become the voice inside your kid's head, the model for your kids. This has to do with the choices you make and the example that you set. The presence you have in their life now is going to be the presence you have in your life well after you are gone. One of the things I tell myself is that my kids don't listen so much to what I say to them, but they definitely hear what I say to other people. My kids might not be listening to me, but they are constantly eavesdropping. My kids overhear me more than they hear me. So instead of spending all our time, which most parents do, trying to talk directly to our kids, to convey messages directly to them, we should be more concerned with what they are overhearing and seeing at the top of the stairs, listening from the other room. They're in the back of the car and we think they're asleep, but actually they can hear us talking to our spouse or talking to the police officer who just pulled us over or whatever. Our kids don't hear what we say to them. They discount that because it's suspicious, it's performative, whatever. But they do see what and how we talk to other people. So you have to watch what you say, not just to them, but throughout your life. You know, I try to catch myself when I'm cursing. I try to catch myself when I'm gossiping. I try to catch myself when I'm being judgmental or criticizing, because my kids are overhearing this. And what I am saying in saying it is not just the thing that I'm saying, but I'm saying this is an okay thing to say. This is an okay way to be. If they hear me complaining, they're hearing not just the complaint. I am co-signing and endorsing the idea of complaining. That's what we have to think about. So we watch what we say, not so much to them, but around them. That's the act we have to get right. Of course, we don't just have to watch what we say, we have to watch what we do. We tell our kids they should follow their dreams, and then we go to work every day in a job that we hate. We tell our kids that they should eat right, and then they catch us sneaking cookies from the pantry. We tell our kids that honesty is important, and then we, maybe throw a couple extra deductions on our taxes. We say that you should be a good sport, and then how do we act when we lose at Monopoly or whatever? When was the last time they saw us write a thank you note? How do we treat that waiter who blew the order over and over again? It's not what we say to our kids, but it's how we act in our own lives, right? We say that school and learning is important. What was the last thing our kids saw us learning or doing? We have to show that we actually believe in these virtues and values in our actions, in how we organize our day, in the things we do and don't do. That idea of being an ancestor or a ghost, Bruce Springsteen was talking from experience. Like everything he learned about shame and broken pride and struggling with demons, the things that sort of go through his music, that was all embodied in his father. His father struggled. His father had problems. His father didn't quite get it together. And Springsteen saw that laid out, and it haunted him. But as unlucky as he was in that sense, he was incredibly lucky to have his mom, who set a very different example. And in Born to Run, he talks about this, not the song, his biography, which is great. He talks about this day going to visit his mom at her job where she was a legal secretary. And he's like, I'm proud because she's proud. He was blown away at seeing his mom in her element, away from the house, away from the job, away from the smallness of their life. He saw her be good at something. He saw her thriving at something. He saw her empowered, and he could see himself in her. And this called him to be better. He said it's what made him want to be a responsible member of society, someone who pulls their own weight, who has mastery, who's needed, who's thriving. We have to model that for our kids. I want my kids to see me work. It's kind of strange that one of the things we do is shelter our kids from the thing that we're best at. When I go do my talks, my kids are at home. Like, I travel to go do that. If I was going to accept an award, my wife and I would get a babysitter and go do that thing. We deprive our kids from seeing us in our element, seeing us at our best, seeing what it means to be good at something, to take pride in something, to be recognized and rewarded at something. Our kids don't see that. We wall that part of our life off. We call it work-life balance. But really, we're not showing our kids what it means to be a well-rounded, well-functioning, enabled person. Springsteen saw the dysfunction at home, and he's like surprised by seeing the functional side of his parents at work. And so we want to show that to our kids. We want to bring that into it. We want to let that example be powerful for them. One of my favorite Dennis Leary jokes, he's like, you want to know how you know racism is taught? Want to know what my 2-year-old hates? Naps. End of list. All the biases, all the shit, all the awfulness in the world, you don't come out of the womb thinking that. These aren't things you pick up from your individual experience. You are infected with it. I actually heard someone talking about this. They grew up in a family that hated cats. Like their dad hated cats or their mom hated cats. And so they just thought they hated cats. And it wasn't until they got a cat as an adult or lived with someone who had a cat, they realized they loved cats. And they're like, oh, that's what racism is, right? That's what prejudice is. And we have to think about what we are modeling. Like, we have our habits, we have our aversions, we have our cynicism, we have our judgments, and we have to remember that in living them out, in behaving in accordance with them, in articulating them, what we're doing is reinforcing them for our kids, and they are picking those things up. So every time we make a mean joke, every time we indulge in a stereotype, or we say something mean or unfair, what we are doing is reinforcing these stereotypes, and our kids are picking them up. That's where our kids learn to judge, to be critical, to be closed-minded. They saw us do it. And if we want to raise kids who are open-minded, who treat people as individuals, who give people the benefit of the doubt, we have to model that. We have to live that. We have to be that. I'm not saying you're a bigot. You're not. But you're not as kind as you could be. You make assumptions when you shouldn't. You say things because you don't think about how they're going to affect someone else. The world needs less judgment, less bullying, less opinion. It needs more kindness, more openness, more justice, more compassion, more empathy. You can start this trend at home. You can make a difference about that at home. I remember I was talking to the bodybuilder Mark Bell one time, and he told me that one of the things he's tried to do with his teenagers is like whenever they slam a door, whenever they quit something, whenever they behave in a way he thinks they shouldn't, instead of yelling at them, instead of criticizing them, he tries to ask them a question. He says, hey, have you ever seen me act that way? And I like this question because first off, it can bring up some uncomfortable conversation. In A Christmas Story, where he goes, where'd you learn to say that? It's like he learned it from his dad. If you can have a two-way line of communication with your kids where they can be like, Dad, what are you talking about? You slam the door all the time. What are you talking about, Mom? I know you smoke when no one's around. If your kids can point back your hypocrisy to you, then you can go, okay, I'm going to work on that. And we're going to work on not doing this thing together. But also it goes to this point of, I'm not asking you, my kid, anything that I'm not asking of myself. And so when we're talking about living with example, we want to be clear that this is something like, I also get frustrated. I also want to quit things. I also have urges and desires. But it's this kind of battle, this struggle to not be the person that slams the door, that doesn't yell when you lose your temper. I'm trying to be the person that is better than that. And it's a struggle. And that I'm on this struggle and you're on this struggle, but we need to hold ourselves accountable to these standards. That's the way you want to think about this leading by example thing. Actually asking them, hey, do you see me do that? Do I let myself get away with that? No, because that's the standard in this house. That's the standard in this life. That's what we expect of a good person, is to not do that, or conversely, to do that. One of the most remarkable NBA Hall of Fame speeches is the one where Tim Duncan is inducted. Tim Duncan was famously mentored by David Robinson. It's one of the great stories in the history of the NBA. An aging star, an up-and-coming star, end up on the same team. Instead of fighting with each other, instead of egos clashing, they learn from each other and they're able to win together. But in this speech, Duncan talks about all the things that he learned from David Robinson. He said, people always ask, what did he say? What did he tell you? What did he show you? And he says, I don't remember any specific conversation about any of these things. He says, what I remember is that he lived up to those things. You know what? It's worth just playing it because it's so remarkable.
People always ask me, what did he tell you? What did he show you? And I was like, I don't remember one thing that we sat down and talked about. He was a consummate pro. He was an incredible father. He was an incredible person. Showed me how to be a good teammate, a great person to the community, all those things, not by sitting there and telling me how to do it, but just by being that. So thank you.
And this is a key idea from the Stoics. They say, don't talk about your philosophy, embody it. This is how it goes in life, in sports, and in philosophy. You don't talk about it, you have to be about it. Look, shit's gonna happen in life. You're gonna fail, you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna fall short, you're gonna get bad news, you're gonna deal with frustrating people, you're gonna deal with crises, right? Stuff is going to happen. It'd be nice if it didn't, but it will, right? Murphy's Law is real. What can go wrong will. Stuff is going to happen. One of the nice things about being a parent, though, one of the saving graces or silver linings of going through all that stuff, we get to remind ourselves when we're in the middle of it, that even though something may have been taken from us, what we've been given is the chance to teach our kids how to deal with this kind of thing. We've been given the chance to model what a person is supposed to do in a situation like this. What that does is it takes us out of the situation a little bit, gives us perspective that, hey, we're not dealing with this thing alone, that we don't have the luxury of being self-indulgent or complaining or doing the wrong thing here, because someone is watching, because someone is looking to us, because we have an opportunity now to teach them how to deal with a crisis, how to own a mistake, how to deal with losing, how to deal with an urge or an impulse, how to deal with life itself. This is a chance for us to show our kids how to deal with stuff like this. It is practice, it's repetition, and it's why we got to get it right, because they are watching us. John Wooden was fond of this famous poem that basically goes, a little fellow follows you. There is a little fellow following you. And so this thing you're dealing with, it might not be fun, it might not be fair, it might not be easy, but what it is an opportunity for you to model for your kids the values you have talked about 1,000 times, for the things you have tried to teach them. You now, in this moment, have a chance to show them that you actually meant those things. You have a chance to show them what those things actually look like. If you want to get better at your most important job, I send out one piece of parenting advice every single day. That's the Daily Dad newsletter. It's followed by hundreds of thousands of parents all over the world. It's totally free, no spam. You can sign up right now for free at dailydad.com.